Welcome back, ladies, gents and Pikachus, from me and my extremely sunburnt head to another analysis and breakdown of the Quran of the Muslims. Yes, we're going to be looking through the words of Allah in the words of Allah in extreme detail, breaking down those verses into factual, easy to understand sentences so we can figure out who is Allah, what is Allah's purpose on earth, and what does he intend for you and I and the rest of the non-Muslims of the world in the current day. So before I get started, as I do every day, I'm going to tell you, if you have any doubts as to my factual accuracy or any of the things I'm saying, please feel free to buy one of these from any good bookshops or off Amazon, which is where I got this one. And then you will realise that every single word I'm telling you is 100% factually accurate to what is in this book. So, let's carry on from where we left off last time. And where we left off last time, we had just finished listening to Allah tell his Muslims that actually the reason why you can't trust the evil Israeli Jews and the Christians, who are disgusting evil hypocrites, is because despite what they say, claiming that they just want to be left alone and live in peace, no, actually they are conspiring to go to war with you and kill you in future, and so you have to self-defensively genocide them before they get the chance. And by the way, the only reason they're doing this is because they're so jealous of you, O Muslims. So, in the word of Allah, that is. So, let's carry on where we left off. 87. Continue your steadfast prayer and paying tithes and charities to my mosques, because trust me, Allah in the book, trust me, whatever you give in blessings to Allah, you will be given back in even greater value. So this is pretty obvious if we break this down, what Allah is trying to say here. He's saying, despite all that stuff I just told you, it might be worrying to you, all this talk about genocide and conspiracies of Jews and Christians to come and kill you, and then you having to plan to kill them before they genocide you, and being jealous and all the rest of this stuff might be very worrying to someone. So Allah knows that the things that he's saying to his Muslims is probably got them living in fear. I think it's in fact what he intends for them to live in fear. But after he's put the fear of Allah into them, he then says, but anyway, continue the worshipping stuff, continue worshipping Allah, reading your Quran, doing all your worshipping stuff that I told you to do. And if you continue steadfastly, as in you do it no matter what, no matter how you feel or what dangers occur or whatever else happens, you continue to do this, and giving money to my mosques is slide in there, which he hasn't mentioned that before, but now we're giving money to the mosques as well as doing the whole Quran worship thing. If you continue to do that, trust me bro, is what Allah says, trust me bro, whatever you give, you will be given back in greater value. Although he doesn't say when, which is important. So, 88. They will claim, none shall see paradise unless he be a Jew or a Christian, in their vanity and ignorance. To that you say, produce proof of your worship, else you be a terrible liar. This is great. Right, let me break this down. It's going to be fun. So the first thing, he's talking about the hypocritical evil Jews and Christians that we're going to kill later. That's they. They will claim, none shall see paradise unless he be a Jew or a Christian. So earlier on, Allah was telling his Muslims, actually, Christians, Jews, pagans and idolaters, atheists and all that, everyone else on earth apart from Muslims, none of these guys get to go to paradise because they're not doing the Quran worship, they're not bowing down enough, and we hate them, they're gonna die, rah, 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 the rest of it. So now he's saying they will claim that only Jews and Christians get to paradise. So that's another reason we should hate them and kill them. And by the way, remember, you can't negotiate or discuss this with them. You just need to kill them and not speak to them. That is Allah's express command. But they will claim, none shall see paradise unless he be a Christian or a Jew, in their vanity and ignorance. So you say to them, when they say that to you, even though you're not allowed to talk to them, and you will die if you talk to them, and they're going to be killed, so there's going to be no opportunity to have this interaction. Allah is saying this to make his Muslims more hateful and angry and evil towards the Jews and Christians. That's the only reason he would say this, after preventing any discussions between them. Produce proof of your worship, else you be a terrible liar. Which is very interesting, because I'm fairly sure he said at the beginning of the book, if anyone does that to him, and his Muslims, if any of us, non-believers, Jews, Christians, Edomites or atheists, if we have the guts to say to Allah or his Muslims, can you produce proof of this? He says no, kill us. So we're not allowed to ask him proof or we're dead. But he's expressly telling his Muslims, whenever we speak of our religions, say, produce proof of your worship, else you'll be a terrible liar. Legit? Absolutely not. But let's continue. 89. No, only those who serve Allah and follow all his Quran worships perfectly are called doers of good. And only doers of good by Allah will be rewarded by the Lord, which is Allah. And have no fear, no grief, and be in Allah's paradise for eternity. So let's break that one down. It's quite interesting. So we're having the discussion, even though we're completely not having the discussion, because he's told us that if we talk to these guys, we'll be killed, and we're going to kill them in future, says Allah to his Muslims, even despite the fact that he's barred conversation and friendships between them. They're the enemies. We've got to kill them. He's now saying, when this little conversation erupts about how none shall see paradise or unless they, produce proof of their worship and all that, no is expressly written as the first line of this verse. So like before, when they are talking, i.e. the Jews and the Christians, those evil hypocrites, when they're talking to you and giving you their factual, logical responses and arguments, cut them off. No, don't let them finish. Say no. And then say, only those who serve Allah and follow all of his Quran stuff are called doers of good. And only they will be rewarded by the Lord. And have no fear, no grief, and be in Allah's paradise. So it's fairly obvious what he's saying here. He's saying, no, don't listen to them. They're evil. Whatever they say, completely ignore it. And even if they look like they're doing good, no matter what their claims are, no matter what they've actually done, even if they are good, Allah has ordained they're not to be considered good or called good under any circumstances unless they're doing the Quran worship and they're bowing to Allah and all the rest of it. Allah, apart from Allah worship, there is no such thing as good, is what he's saying. That's what this says. 90. Jews dislike Christians and Christians dislike Jews. Both claim the other stand on nothing and that their religion is false. Yet they study the same book. Lo, for shame. Allah will judge both of these hypocrites in the end. So, if we break this down, Jews dislike Christians and Christians dislike Jews. Now, straight away, remember we're not allowed to talk to either of these people, Jews and Christians. We have to kill them later. They're trying to kill us by a conspiracy of genocide against the Muslims. So we're not allowed to talk to them. Next time we see them, they're all dead. That's what we've been told in the last verse. Now we're being told why that's okay. The reason it's okay is because they hate each other anyway, and they're both false. Jews dislike the Christians, even though they pretend to like them. Christians dislike Jews, even though they pretend to like them. And they're both full of crap. Neither one of these guys has got anything true, and they're both false religions. They're both horrible, hypocritical sinners who must die. That's what Allah's saying here. He carries on. Yet they study the same book. Lo, for shame. Allah will judge both these hypocrites in the end. So the reason he's saying that, he's saying, look, Jews and Christians hate each other, even though they claim to be nice to each other. So in the end, they'll end up killing each other anyway. It's all fake. On the surface, they're nice, but they actually are lying to us and to each other. And the reason is, even though they study the same book, they're doing it in shame. That means they don't believe it anyway. Even though Jews are studying the Torah and the Christians have got the Gospels and the Gospels mentions the Torah, even though they're both convinced that their God is the same God and the Messiah of the Jews is Jesus, they both claim that. Even despite that and them studying the same book, lo, for shame, Allah will judge these hypocrites in the end. So what that means is, lo, for shame, even though they're claiming to study this book, it's all fake. They're only doing it for like attention, or maybe popularity or money or something like that. Lo, for shame means they're not doing it because they believe it. They're not doing it because it's true. They're only doing it because they're bad, stupid, evil Jews and hypocrite Christians who must be killed, in the words of Allah. Allah will judge both these hypocrites in the end. So we're capping that off with whatever happens with these disgusting evil Christians and Jews, these goddamn dogs and evil pigs and hypocrites. What will happen in the end is while they're arguing, Allah will turn up and judge either one of them and then send them off to hell. So they'll equally be damned. So don't worry about killing them. They're damned anyway. Allah hates them. And remember, if you don't do this, bow to worship of Allah, you will go to hell too. Dead, head off your body, and you're gone. So don't do that. 91. But who could be more unjust and perverted than he who rejects the Quran? Who forbids Allah worship but the worst of beings? Allah is great and needs to be celebrated. He shall judge and bring them to ruin. Disgraceful hypocrites and Satans shall be deterred in exceeding torment forever. Wow, that's some strong language, isn't it? So, let's break this down. But who could be more unjust and perverted than he who rejects my book, says Allah. Once again, he's providing even more ammunition for hating everybody else on earth apart from Muslims. And he's also saying, if you ever go away from being a Muslim, if you ever decide you don't like this and you stop worshipping it, even if you're loved, even if your family love you and your friends love you, even if you're like the king of the country, remember you're only the king because Allah is making you the king and you're doing all his Allah worship stuff. So he's reiterating it here and saying, who could be more unjust and perverted than a person who rejects this? The worst people on earth are non-Allah worshippers. So murderers, rapists, thieves, liars. They're not that bad. The people who don't worship the Quran, they're the bad ones. That's what he's saying here. Allah is great and needs to be celebrated. He shall judge and bring them to ruin, those disgraceful hypocrites and Satans. They shall be deterred in exceeding torment forever. So what he's saying here is, what's going to happen to them, even though they're having their own kingdom now, and they're pretending they study the same book now and pretending to be all peaceful and nice, what's going to happen is, because they're disgraceful hypocrites and Satans, after they die, they're going to be held in exceeding torment. Like the worst grave torture and rotting in hell anyone's going to have is reserved for the Christians and the Jews. Stoking up more hate for these people in order that when we go and have a holy war and chop off all their heads and kill them later, everybody rejoices and it's righteous rather than something we'll feel bad about. 92. Because Allah owns all of East and West, there will be no hiding from Allah, for whoever so turn away shall again be faced only with Allah. That's pretty obvious. What he's saying here, if we break this down, because Allah owns East and West, so what he's saying here, Allah is saying to his Muslims, despite the fact that we only own this tiny piece of the world and it's huge and there's all these other cultures and nations and countries and individuals, everyone else on earth basically, because they're all there, it's actually wrong. Allah owns all of those countries and all of those places and nations should rightfully be yours, O Muslims. That's what Allah's telling them. Muslims, Allah is telling you the entire world by right belongs to you. And all these hypocrites and evil Christians and Jews and atheists and apostates and idolaters and flipping everybody else, when they die, not only is it going to be righteous, but you need to kill them, otherwise you can't take back East and West for Allah. And by the way, whoever so turn away shall again be faced with Allah. So what he's saying there is there's no hiding place. Allah is saying to his Muslims, when these little buggers run away from us in fear from their lives and try to flee, no matter where they go and hide, Allah's going to be waiting there for them and is going to let you know where they are hiding so you can cover the whole world and kill every single person who isn't worshipping Allah. That's what this means. Oh, that's the end of our reading. So only 6 today. Yeah, I forgot. The next 2, we start a new bit. So going through this from the beginning, to summarise, we start with here, Allah is reassuring his Muslims, look, I know how bad it looks and how bad it sounds what I'm saying, and I know you must have your doubts, but remember what happens to people who have doubts, and remember what happens to people who don't do the Allah worship. They get horribly killed and tortured and hated and they burn in hell forever, so don't do that. And just in case this makes you feel sad, continue your steadfast prayer and also give me money. Don't forget to give Allah money. His mosques need money. And then, even if this makes you poor and you go without now, don't worry about it. When you get to paradise, all that will come back to you like 10 times more. So Allah's making the false promises that we know him for and deceiving his own Muslims out of what they earn. Their crust of bread that they eat and their money has to go back to the mosque for Allah. And they have to go out and do his worship and his work. And if they don't, they're dead. The next bit I feel is very important to what's happening in the world today and the outcomes for you and I. When he says, they will claim none shall see paradise unless Jew or Christian. So he's actually programming and enslaving his Muslims into thinking, not only are these Jews and Christians bad for the world and they are wanting to come and kill Muslims according to Allah, they say of us Muslims, in the words of Allah, that we will be the only he's saying here that Jews and Christians are going to share paradise in their own words, and they're saying that Muslims are the only group who are not allowed to go. And then when they bring this to you, you ask them for proof of your worship. Now we already know Allah takes a very strict view of people asking his worshippers for proof of his miracles. You're dead if you ask for them. You're not allowed to prove his miracles. But he's expressly telling his Muslims that proof is needed from these others. So we're back to the socialism that he starts with when he's right back in the Garden of Eden with Adam being above him and the angels being above him in this little class system that he likes. So this is further proof that Allah is a socialist, even though a lot of people think that he is God who are Muslims, or Satan if they're Christians. He's actually lower than that. He's literally like Satan who wants a class structure for us. He wants a class structure so the people who he likes the most are at the top and the people who he dislikes the most are at the bottom. And that's the proof here. He's teaching his Muslims that there's one rule for them because of this and one rule for everybody else because not this. You get me? So he's literally saying, anyone who does his worship, you're the top ranked people, you get benefits and privilege. And anyone who doesn't read this, you're in the bottom group and you don't get bugger all. You get no privileges, and in fact we're going to torture you. And then he finishes up by saying Allah owns East and West. So, judging by what's happening today in the world, the war is currently in the East, and you think, well, whoever wins, it's just going to stay in the East. But Allah's explicitly said here, Allah owns East and West, and when they win the war in Israel and they defeat the Jews, then they're going to move on to the Christians, the Edomites, who is like Jordanian, other people in the Middle East. They're going to kill those, then they're going to kill the Christians, then they're going to kill the atheists, then they're going to kill the idolaters. And that means spreading out from east to west. So what this is not just a call to genocide in Israel. This is a call to world war. World War III will be the next one. So this is literally, in the words of Allah, expressing that Allah is commanding his Muslims at the threat of death if they refuse, not only to hate everybody and kill the Jews, Christians, Edomites and everyone else, but to actually spread out and dominate those places so that Allah's rule can be covering the whole world. And that is literally expressly written in here. Like I always say, if you don't believe me, buy and read this and you will find every single word of that is every single word of this. It is the same. It is true. So that's the end of this video. Hope you've enjoyed that and you learnt something. And I'll see you in the next one, which will be tomorrow at 7:15, where we will be going through the next piece of this horrific, genocidal, murderous ideology and figuring out what we are going to do in future in order to solve this problem that we are now faced with, the incoming World War III caused by Allah worship and their hate of us non-believers. So that's the end of it for now. See you tomorrow. God bless. Good night. And I'll see you then. Bye. And if you would like more information on how you are all evil Satans who will burn forever in hell, please come back here tomorrow and we'll finish our reading then. Until then, God bless, enjoy yourself, and I'll see you next time. Bye!